If you don't have an interesting, a compelling introduction, no one's even going to bother listening to the rest of that pitch.
Hello and welcome to episode 133 of the Smart Agents Podcast. My name is Michael Walter and I'll be your host. We're all well aware that in today's world, people's attention spans are at an all-time low. According to recent studies, you have about 8 seconds to make a good first impression. So to help combat that, we are joined by the message master, Glenn Rudin. Throughout our conversation, Glenn shares his tips and advice for perfecting your elevator pitch. He breaks down the top 3 components of a winning pitch and shares practical tips for leaving your audience and potential clients wanting to hear more. Now, before we get on to the day's featured interview, make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents Podcast. You can find the show on all major podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and now Amazon Music. Also, if you or someone else on your team has an incredible story or a tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. We're always on the lookout for new stories to share. All right, let's get on to the day's featured interview with Glenn Rudin. The conversation is packed full of great advice, and you can check out more from Glenn at alwaysbecreative.com. The way I like to start everything out is if you could just introduce yourself to us a little bit, who you are, and kind of a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Love that. Okay. So, 90% of the people that I come in contact with struggle with some portion of their elevator pitch, their personal branding, their message, their business strategy. And it doesn't have to be like that. I specialize in helping small business owners, entrepreneurs, real estate agents, and real estate agencies really help them understand the value that they can provide and then help them translate that value into the words and messages that need to be used in their pitches, on their websites, in their marketing materials, and everything else that they put out from a messaging standpoint into the world. My name is Glenn Rudin, and I have been an entrepreneur and product development person for the last 30 years. And what I've realized over the last 5 or 6 is that people, just like products, need to be packaged. They need to be branded. They need to have a purpose, because in essence, as people, we want to be picked up by the people who come into our sphere of influence, no different than a product. And we've got the ability to package ourselves in terms of how we dress, so kind of our labeling. And we've got the ability to speak for ourselves and give somebody a reason why they might want to come in contact with us. So that's a good synopsis of what I do and the value that I provide for the people that I try to help with branding, messaging, marketing, and pitch.
Right. And, like we were talking, real estate, it's so oversaturated and so difficult, especially if you're a newer agent, to try to separate yourself from, like you said, you're in Long Island, 25,000 registered agents. I'm here in North Florida. There's, thousands and thousands and more. And really over the last few years, because of the way the market was, it just exploded even more. So I really want to kind of start off by, how do you, put together that pitch that separates yourself?
Right. Really, really interesting question. And, what I always like to tell clients, potential clients, the people that take my classes and that I work with in groups, is the first thing you really have to think about really deeply and hard is differentiation, right? What is it that you can do that's different, that will stand out versus the other people that do what you do? So everybody always comes back, Michael, to the elevator pitch. And there's 3 key components of the elevator pitch. There's an introduction statement. There's a unique selling proposition, USP. And then the third part that blends those first 2 together is engagement. And what a lot of people don't understand is that elevator pitch is not meant to be a sales pitch, nothing even close to it. So let's start with this. The first thing you need to know about an elevator pitch before you even start to write it, and I hope you will, is that for it to be effective, You just want people to hear something that you're saying be interesting enough so that they want to follow up and say, hey, Michael, that I heard you say that. It's really interesting. Can you tell me more? So go into your elevator pitch thinking, in order to be effective, I want to raise somebody's eyebrows. I want to get them leaning in and listening and thinking, gee, that sounded interesting. Can I hear more? That's the first place to start.
Right. Absolutely. And I think it was actually one of the videos I was watching. I believe it was titled, something along the lines of take a sip, not the whole drink type analogy.
Yes.
And I think that really, kind of, it clicked with me. Like, I'm not trying to serve the whole meal to somebody right there. I'm just trying to get them interested.
Right. And the easiest, the most visual example of that, right, is if you go to, to the shopping mall and you walk by the food court, right, and they're handing out, maybe, and I'm not sponsored by, I'd love to be, Smoothie King, right? So you walk by the Smoothie King and they're not giving you an entire Smoothie King. They're not saying, here, have the entire milkshake, right? They've got these little, caps that they hand out that have just a little bit of a taste. So, you get to taste whatever that strawberry banana or, cherry melon, whatever they're featuring this week. You get a little bit of the taste of that sweetness on your tongue so that later on, when you're thinking about that, you think, gee, that was really good. Later, I might really want to get the whole thing. So if you think of your elevator pitch as a way just to, again, entice somebody to hear something about what you do, to say, hey, Michael, hey, Glenn, I heard that. Can I get your business card? Can I get your contact information? I'd love to hear more. And even in that second encounter, you're still not really selling somebody. You're now really trying to fill in some of the details and answer some of the questions they may have about what you said in your pitch. And not to run on with a really long answer here, but at the top of your pitch, I mentioned that introduction. If you don't have an interesting, a compelling introduction, no one's even going to bother listening to the rest of that pitch. So those first 8 to 10, maybe 12 seconds of what should be a 30-second pitch are key in your getting somebody really to lean in and listen longer, to be interested, to want to hear more. That's so important. I always say, if you don't start right, you can't finish right. It's just impossible.
Right. So when you're working with somebody on developing this elevator pitch and really that first 8-second hook, how do you, what kind of practice it, drills or to really kind of start getting them to think about what separates themselves to where they can put, package into that 8 seconds?
Right. So there's a couple of questions that are really key that and again, I always say this, you really do need to sit down. I don't know whether you put it into a document online or you actually, handwrite it on a piece of paper, but why does your business even exist? So if you're in real estate, why does your real estate business exist? We just talked about this. There's 25,000 agents here in Long Island. There's thousands where you are in Northern Florida. Why does your real estate business exist? Can't the world live without your real estate business, right? And you need to really think about that. So why does it exist? What is it that you do differently than when you look, to your left, to your right? What are the other agents that are in your market? What are their specialties? And what can you do that's different than theirs? And this is the way I like to really describe this process. Right. It's 2023. We just started a new year, and there's a good chance if I don't know you, right, I've lived without you, your product, your service, your real estate agency, not me personally, for 2023 years, but the world has. And so you have to ask yourself, why do we need you? What is different about you? Because there is a really good chance right now, if I'm thinking of selling my house, there is somebody in my neighborhood here in Long Island that basically rules this neighborhood, right? When a house goes up for sale, she's the person. I know she knows exactly what she's doing. She's an expert. She sells hundreds of houses here in this market. That's who I'm probably going to go to. And the reason I make this point is most of us have a service provider in almost every category you can think of. So if I asked you, Michael, if you were going to sell your house or your condo, Do you have, somebody in that space that you would go to? You
Right.
probably
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
Right. So if I come along, you now meet me at a networking meeting, what is going to make you change your loyalty from the person you're working with now to me? And if I can't give you a really compelling reason, something really interesting about the way I do it versus the way that current service provider does it, I really have no reason to change. And I won't, because we're creatures of habit. We like being comfortable with the patterns that we live in. So, there's 100 coffee places, and yet I go by the Starbucks over here and people are lined up there. Why? Is there anything different about that Starbucks versus another one that might be on the way to work that might have a shorter line, or another local coffee shop that's different, right? So we're all creatures of habit. And if we want someone to start utilizing us as a new habit, we've got to give somebody a reason to break their old habit.
Right. One of the things you touched on, like your USP, but you mentioned the engagement part. Tell me a little bit about that, because I think that's one that, the other two, I think people kind of, understand and understand, like, I have to find what separates me. But tell me about the engagement part of that.
Right. So when you kick off or start your elevator pitch with a strong introduction, I'll just go through the process a little bit because it'll help everybody listening or watching understand. So the introduction for me, the way I coach this is I like people, my clients, I try to get them to think about doing some research in their space and come up with a fact or a question that will immediately get somebody to stop and think two things. One, you're smart on the topic that you're speaking about. And two, you've taken time to understand something about me that I need help with, that I need to understand. So there's empathy that comes across and knowledge that comes across when you use a fact or a question. And again, when I go back to my pitch and I say, did you know that 90% of the people I come in contact with struggle? And as soon as I say that, people start thinking, wait a minute, I think he's talking to me or about something that I need help with. And that's the engagement part that starts to get somebody reeled in. And then if I follow that up with, if you are struggling with this, the great news is I can help. I've got time-tested, proven methods where I will work with you one-on-one to endeavor to understand what we can think about your business, what processes we can come up with about your business that are different, that will allow you to stand out. So it's that process that I do that is engaging for people, because they think, yeah, I have this problem and I hear this guy's willing to work with me. He's not just going to send me some booklet. He's not just going to put me through some course that everybody else goes through. He's going to take the time to really listen to me. So what's engaging there is the fact that, number one, I've got you leaning in and saying, wait a minute, I think he's addressing an issue that I have. And now it sounds like, wow, he sounds really approachable. And it sounds like he works with people like me. So I'm not some lost cause that can't be helped in this situation. And that's the engagement, right? Getting somebody to feel like they belong, speaking with you further, breaking down the barrier a little bit, making it safe. I'm not selling you. I haven't said you need to pay me $500 to talk to me for a half hour, that kind of a thing. I just want you to feel comfortable with A, this is an issue that you have, and B, we can speak about it so I can help you. And that's what creates engagement. So in the real estate space, right, there's two places that we really can go, right? We can be speaking to other professionals in the industry where we're thinking, okay, they're not necessarily somebody that is going to be in the market, although they may be eventually, but they may know somebody who is. And if they feel like I've got a different approach to the way I manage my real estate clients, they might be willing to say, hey, Michael, I heard him talk about how he evaluates his real estate clients. He's got a really different process and you should speak to him, right? So the engagement statement got me engaged, even though I'm not somebody who's looking to be purchasing real estate myself, but I know somebody who is. Does that help answer that engagement question for you?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I think, real estate is so, the unique thing when you're coming up with the elevator pitches are that you have a lot of different types of clients. And so tailoring those pitches to those types of clients, I think, is really important as well. It's not a one size fits all type approach.
Right. Now, so think about it, right? Let's just take and separate out, first of all, if I'm a real estate agent, just two really easy examples, and I'm going to a trade show for first-time home buyers or young married couples, right? That's going to be a completely different pitch because these are potentially people who are buying a first home, might be nervous about whether or not they've got the down payment, might be nervous about whether or not they can afford to live in particular communities, might be concerned about the school systems in the area, right? Because they're just starting families. So completely different pitch than, let's say I'm a real estate agent now and I'm going to a convention with other real estate agents to learn about real estate. Well, what can I say to those other real estate agents? Because I certainly don't want to pitch myself as an agent. They're all agents too, right? But how can I make myself interesting for people to follow up with so that if someone's coming into my market from their market or vice versa, maybe there's a collaborative effort. And I'm sure a lot of people don't ever bother to plant that seed. Hey, listen, Michael, I don't know that I know anybody moving to the St. Augustine or Northern Florida area, but I'd love to have a collaborative agreement in place with you. And if you ever know somebody who's coming up to Long Island and they need someone to show them around, that would be phenomenal, right? So if a real estate agent goes into that convention with that mindset that I'm looking to grow, my sphere of influence outside my area so that people coming to the area, migrating in, have a referral from somebody that knows me, right, and gets to know me. That's a completely different pitch than the first-time home buyers. So it's really important to understand who is the audience that you're going after. That's one way to specialize. The other way is to really be an expert in your particular area that you work in, right? So here where I am in Suffolk County in Long Island, we spoke a little bit early as we were meeting each other, right? There's 250 communities out here in Long Island. I can't specialize in all of them, right? And so depending on where somebody wants to go, right, that's a reason for me to say, hey, listen, I understand. I'm not going to be your real estate agent, right? If you're looking for a home way out in Montauk, way out in the Hamptons in Long Island. But I've got relationships with people there, and I'd love to introduce you to somebody that I know that's in that area, as opposed to taking the approach of, I know everything about everywhere, because it comes off so disingenuous.
Right, absolutely. And, I think what I really like about that approach too, and, having like those really good relationships with other agents in those communities, it's like anytime you give a good referral for a restaurant, people are going to tell their friends, but then also say, oh yeah, remember Michael's the one that gave me this, told me about that. So your name keeps coming up in that cycle of conversation.
Right. Really, really important. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues with pitch that people just don't understand is, again, if we go back to the basics, the idea is to create engagement. An effective pitch, if you're going to, let's say, a Chamber of Commerce meeting and there's 25 or 30 people there, is it realistic to think that all 25 are going to line up and they want to, know your contact information and everything? Absolutely not. But if you've done a really good job to distinguish yourself and the service that you provide, the value that you provide, you would think 3, 4, 5 people are approaching you afterward, and that should say to you, I'm on the right track. I'm saying something that people hear, it's resonating with them, and they want to hear more. That's perfect. That is the idea of an elevator pitch. And if you do that every single month, let's say, every month, 4 people, 5 people, maybe one month you get really lucky, 6 people. But by the end of the year, you've got, 60, 70 new contacts that have heard you, that understand you, that can, form referral relationships with you. That's what building a network is all about. That's what an effective elevator pitch is all about. And let me just say this too. When people don't take the time to really think about their pitch, Michael, to rehearse it, they usually end up adding all kinds of filler information right at the top of it out of nervousness or lack of preparation that does nothing for them. So if someone went back and listened to my pitch at the top of the show, I didn't mention my name. Still don't think I've mentioned my company's name, Always Been Creative, or that I'm known as the message master. And I certainly don't mention where I'm from. Well, why? Because who I am doesn't matter. That my company's name doesn't matter. You're not buying my company. Where I'm from doesn't matter. We're not going out to lunch just yet. And so filling the top of your elevator pitch with all this information that no one needs basically just does this. It uses up our attention spans. And now we're looking around the room to say, okay, I don't even know what this guy is talking about or woman is talking about. I'm just going to wait for the next person who might say something that's relevant or that I need to hear. And keep this in mind. There's really interesting research that I've come up with on elevator pitches and attention spans, and maybe your followers have seen this or heard this or not. 25 years ago, the average attention span for human beings was measured at about 12 and a half seconds. So I would pay attention and listen to you for 12 and a half seconds while you start doing your elevator pitch. And so if it's bad, those first 8 to 10 seconds, forget it. It's done. Well, as of a year or so ago, same research done, attention spans, because of all of our reliance on phones and Twitter and immediate things and everything that's coming at us, attention spans have dropped by over 30%. And now the attention span is down to about 8.5 seconds. So if you don't really grab somebody in those first 8 to 10 seconds of your pitch, for the most part, they're gone. They're not going to come back. It's really hard to reel them back in once they're disinterested. It just doesn't happen.
Right. And by doing that, and practicing, there's so many great, just while you're driving, you can set up like just even a voice recording and just go over it and over it and over it and go back and listen and kind of figure out, tweak it, and really try to, get that message honed in those 8 seconds.
Yeah, listen, what I recommend is I'd say that the market is pretty saturated. I don't think I know anybody that doesn't have a smartphone. Do you? I don't, right? So turn it around, record yourself, and just, before you even just show it to anybody else, hey, be honest. Are you interesting to yourself? Right? I do a seminar called Would You Do Business With You? Right? Would you do business with you? In other words, if you heard yourself pitching to yourself, would you be interested enough in your own self to say, yeah, that's interesting, I would listen to it? Because I would venture to say, again, 9 out of 10 people that I come in contact with, they would not do business with themselves. They wouldn't even keep listening to their own pitch. They'd be bored. It's meandering. It doesn't have any purpose to it. And so, look, it takes time. I like to equate an elevator pitch, Michael, to a performance, as if you were going on stage, because you do have an audience, the people listening to you. You should have a script. That's what you're going to be saying, right? If you went to a show here in New York on Broadway or down there in St. Augustine, and the actor came on stage and started fumfering around and calling off, on the side, hey, I need a line. Would you even want to sit through that performance? You wouldn't. And the last component of that is, you need to be in costume. So if you're not dressed appropriately for what a person in your field should look like, you're also going to detract from people listening to you, because people will look and think, that's not somebody that I want to be doing business with. They're not dressed appropriately for the space we're in. And I would like to think real estate is a professional business. So as much as people want to resist, you can't wear flip-flops. You can't wear cut-off shirts, right? You've got to be dressed the part so that someone looks at you and says, that's a professional that I'm willing to deal with, right? I can see them in the role of my real estate agent. Right.
Kind of switching gears a little bit from the, the elevator pitch, but keeping with this, branding and the messaging, how do you, I think it's really important to make sure that the message that you are projecting with your elevator pitch is congruent with everything from your website to any marketing materials you're putting out there. That's really all has to work together, or people, when they do look you up, they're like, wait a second, I thought you were talking about, your expertise in this community? How important is that to make sure everything is congruent?
Oh my goodness, it's so important because if someone sees you, let's say in this space that you and I are speaking in, meet us, at a meeting, and everything seems good. The pitch was good. I followed up. Okay, now I get a business card. I go and I look at the website, and I can see the website looks like it's from 15 years ago, or the links don't work, or the photos on there are severely dated. Same thing with the marketing material. Same thing with the business card. If the business card looks old and frayed, every one of these steps along the way is either on the positive side a way to solidify who you are and show somebody your level of professionalism across a broad array of your marketing materials and your techniques, or it's a way to get tripped up. Someone goes to a website, doesn't look professional. You start thinking to yourself, wow, this person doesn't look like they know what they're doing, right? Listen, if we back up and you show up to this meeting you're going to, this networking meeting, and you're not dressed appropriately, you're eroding your percentage of opportunity with that person, because they're going to look and say, wow, if that person is a mess here, what are they going to be like when I have to deal with them on a professional level? And so basically it almost becomes a set of hurdles that someone needs to jump over as they're evaluating you. And along the way, if you trip them up, it's almost like a video game. If you get tripped up on any one of those levels, in a video game, you go back and you start trying again. But in real life, we don't do that. We get tripped up and we say, nope, we're going to start a different video game. We're not going to keep playing this one with this person. So it's a great question, and you need to be consistent across all of what you do. I try telling people this also, right? I don't know if you're an Instagram person or a TikTok person or LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it is, those posts there also where you're representing yourself, they too need to be consistent, right? You've got to resist the urge to want to be, let's say, the life of the party or the town comedian in these things, because somebody wants to put their trust in you. They're going to put their financial faith in you that you can get the job done for them. And if when they look for you, they find images of you in less than professional environments and behaving less than professionally, there's also erosion of your reputation with them. So you have to be really, really careful and really, really intentional about the way you do those things.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's a really important one is, just in any professional setting, you have to understand what you're putting out there, for people to see.
Yeah. I mean, great example. One of the clients that I had early last year was somebody who works in life insurance, selling life insurance. Now, to me, I know that on television, there's always this attempt to try to be funny, right? With ads on TV. And, I get it, Flo from Geico, not the Gecko from Geico, and Flo from, I don't even remember which agency she's with, right? They've turned these things funny. And somehow in the research they've done, there's a certain amount of memory that I guess those jokes create. But if you're not a professional comedian, then I would really, really suggest strongly that you don't try to use humor in your things. So this particular person who was in life insurance, she was putting out videos where she was trying to be funny. And, I'd say to her, look, you're talking about life insurance. It's a really serious topic. So I know you want to cut up and I know you want to be funny. Create a different account and don't use your name or your business's name and mix the two up. Because somebody who, really is endeavoring to get information about life insurance probably doesn't want to get it from somebody who's trying to be the class clown and get laughs with jokes that are probably not that funny.
Right. Yeah. I think you really have to make sure that you're not polarizing, a big part of your client base if you're doing those kind of things. I mean, if you're going to do it, understand that the Instagram, that's probably not where you're going to be bringing in a whole bunch of leads, and don't treat it that way if that's the route you're going to go.
Yeah. And look, this is another one too. I know we all have our some of us more than others, our long-standing political beliefs. But for me, I don't think they belong in your business communications, right? If you believe strongly in one party or another, in my judgment, I tell my clients, listen, keep it to yourself. Your business is not the place where you need to do that because, listen, we know in our country, a two-party system, there's a really good chance you could put something out that's going to alienate half of your audience. Why would you want to do that? It's not important. If the business you're in is not getting people to vote for a candidate, leave that to the people that are getting people to vote for candidates, right? Keep your political opinions and your opinions to me on controversial things outside of your business. I don't think the two of them belong, and I think you're going to only hurt yourself because I think a lot of people are not going to go below the surface. They're going to look at that statement and go, "Oh, that person, I don't believe in what that is." And I try to tell people this all the time, and yet I still see people doing it. And in my judgment, it's a big mistake.
Right. I mean, even just on a personal level, I know if somebody that maybe my son, his baseball team, maybe we've become Facebook friends, and all of a sudden I see a post that I'm like, no, that's not, I'm immediately like, I'm going to unfollow that. So I just don't even see it again. And we just have it. This is a baseball relationship.
Yeah. And next time you go to the game, you probably won't sit next to them either.
Right. When it comes to the elevator pitch and the branding, I think it's also really important for agents to, not rely on the brokerage brand, and you're creating that personal brand. And I think that's something that is sometimes a little bit difficult for newer agents that don't have the experience or maybe come from a background where, personal branding was a big part of it, that they were you really are, no matter what stage in your real estate career you're a sole business owner.
Yeah. Listen, you take your personal brand with you everywhere. And for those people that don't understand what that personal brand is, it's what we think of you, what we remember about you, what our impressions are of you when you've left the room, right? Someone will watch this video of me, and hopefully you agree that I know what I'm speaking about in this space, but I'm really, really intentional about being motivated, enthusiastic, knowledgeable about the things that I know about. And if someone has a question for me on a space that I don't know about or I don't understand, I don't venture into that area. I will help you find somebody that knows that space. So how do you get intentional about that personal brand? You can go to my website. I've got this great free document, and we can make that available to anybody watching your stuff. We can give them a link to this, and it's a personal brand development worksheet. And basically what it's a list of adjectives that you pick out in specific categories that you would use to describe yourself, right? So I'm creative. That would be one of the things I want people to know about me because of the work that I do. I'm enthusiastic. I'm dedicated to the people that come to me for help. I'm empathetic. So these are a lot of the words that I like to use for myself. And then every time I've got the opportunity to create an impression in the world, I have these in the back of my mind, and I'm thinking, I always want to be consistent here, right? I don't want to be considered as funny guy. And so that's not one of the things I'm intentional about. It doesn't mean that I don't have a sense of humor, or that if I see an appropriate place to put a joke into a discussion, I won't do it because it's part of my personality. But it's not what I lead with. It's not what I'm intentional about. And this is one of the issues. I speak on college campuses. I'm always looking for campuses where I can go and speak to the students, because schools don't teach this, and we don't learn this in our lives either. That the more intentional and the sooner you're intentional about who you are and how you want to be perceived, the better the chance are that you will be perceived that way. And that's how you will come across to people. And again, because it's the essence of you when you're not around, when your name comes up and someone thinks about you in a positive way, that will say, oh yeah, he was really creative. He was really good with this elevator pitch stuff. That's a guy that you should speak to. That's my personal brand. That's now going to hang around with anybody that listens to all of this or some portion of what you and I are speaking about. And so every time I come on camera with a great podcaster like you, I'm really intentional about the way I come across. So every time someone sees me, and every time someone sees me in one of my video posts, it's really, really consistent. I just keep hammering home on that same theme. And here's another great tip, for your viewers. Don't get bored with your content. Don't get bored with your content. Right? I always use the example. I don't know if I date myself with this or not, right? The Rolling Stones have been touring for 40 years. Right. And when they go out and they perform the song Satisfaction for probably the 10,000th time, maybe more, who knows? I don't even know if they bother counting such things up. But there's a really good chance that there's a younger person in the audience who's never seen them perform, or there's a person who could never get a ticket to see them perform before. And when they do that performance of Satisfaction for that 10,000th time, they can't, as I would say, mail it in. They've got to do it with enthusiasm, just like they did it the first time before it was even a hit record for them, a hit single, a hit song. And so I say to your people listening, don't get bored with your own content. There's a really good chance that somebody is hearing it for the first time, and they need to hear it as enthusiastically as the time you did it 3 years ago at the Chamber of Commerce meeting. Don't get bored and think you've got to do something different. It's not about how it perceives for you. It's about how your audience is perceiving you and what you do.
Yeah, I really like that analogy with the musical performance, because, you're right. You can't think that your audience has seen you before or, heard your message before. This is your chance to bring in a brand new set of eyeballs and ears to your message.
And even if they have, look, even if someone has heard my message before, they're hearing it again, what does that do? It just reinforces this guy is the real thing. He really does what he does. I might not need his services, but I respect it. This is what he does. He gets himself. He understands who he is. He's not swerving here. He's not swerving there. He's staying in his lane and doing what he knows how to do. And, as a real estate agent, this is the thing. We all get sometimes not even bored with ourselves, but we have unrealistic expectations. We think, okay, I've done that pitch one time. The entire crowd that I was with didn't line up to get my autograph and want to follow up with me and become a lifetime fan. And so I did something wrong. And it's not to say that you might not have done something wrong, but it could be the first time you did it right. And the next time you show up, when you do it right like that again, it's going to resonate with even more people. And then people are going to start to really understand, oh, here comes Glenn, the pitch guy, the branding guy. I don't need that right now, but it's a pleasure to listen to him because he knows what he's doing and he's really got it polished. This is a funny story, and this is a true story. So I go to these networking events often, the kind I'm thinking, everybody's sitting around in a semicircle, right? And people start doing their pitch, it goes around the room, and eventually, it's going to come to me wherever I'm sitting in the room, right? It'll get to me. I'll take a deep breath. I'll stand up. I will perform my pitch. Now I understand this is what I do for a living. And invariably, this always happens. The next person after me always says, oh, great, I got to follow him. And it's like, listen, it's not like you came here and you didn't know we were going to be doing this. I'm not saying that, you've got to do it as well as me, but you've got to be able to do some facsimile of this so that you understand what you're here to do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. I mean, we could honestly go on for a much longer time, but where can people find more of all your great information, to get more tips like you've shared today?
Appreciate that. Really, really do. And I really appreciate being here with you. You're a great interviewer, and I appreciate you giving me the leeway to get my points out. So you can find my website right up here, alwaysbeencreative.com. That's simple. Glenn with two N's, as you see it up here, Rudin. LinkedIn. I'm the only Glenn Rudin on LinkedIn that I am aware of, and I love engaging with people there. I constantly post things there as well. If you're an Instagram or a TikTok person, you could find me on there also. On Instagram, it's Glenn _ Rudin _ message _ master. But if you do searches for me, just a simple Google search, you'll find my website. You'll find my various places where you can see me. I've got a YouTube channel that's not very actively promoted, but you can find great stuff there also on this topic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll have everything down in the episode description. So I'll have plenty of the links out there for however, our listeners are looking to.
Well, let me toss this in at the last second also here. Yeah. This is a book that I wrote last year. It's called A Brand in Your Hand. And this is the business world's first fully rhyming, full color book on branding and messaging. So if you like Dr. Seuss type rhymes and things like that, it's all here, a real simple introduction to branding and messaging that's done with these really fun, sing-songy rhymes that are easy to remember, that will clue you in on branding, on messaging, on things like that. This is up on Amazon. You can get a digital or you can get a hard copy of it as well. And if you're somebody who's looking for more information in this area, it's a great introduction to all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have that linked as well. Again, really do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning.
Really look forward to seeing this, and I really appreciate your time and the opportunity. Thanks so much, Michael. You have a great day.
I really want to thank Glenn for taking the time to share all of his great tips for creating a winning elevator pitch and captivating your audience. Remember, if you would like to see more from Glenn, check out alwaysbecreative.com. I've also linked his book, A Brand in Your Hand, in the episode description. So once again, if you think you or someone else on your team has an incredible story or tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. Well, that wraps things up for this episode, but remember, follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Again, I'm Michael Walter, and we'll see you on the next episode.